Hey, Jeremy. Hope everyone's doing all right. Today, I wanted to talk about charter schools and voucher systems for schools and education. I am doing roughly 6 months of going over topics. I've done a couple of them, and it seems like that the longer the video is, the less views there are, so I might have to break this down. We're going to give it a try, and we're going to see what happens. But as long as we kind of have some information going, that'll be fine. If you've been watching my videos, you know that the way that I operate is that I have a text-rich document, which is here above my head, and we are going to define it. We're going to go over both sides of the topic at hand to get down to what really the answers are with these things, giving both the for and against all of these issues. That's because today in the computer age, we should have information just all over the place so that we could make the best possible decisions with the most accurate information that we currently have. And that's not what goes on at all. It's like people don't know how to talk. They don't know what the points are. They don't understand what straw man arguments are. It's just ridiculous. So I'm going to go through and clean all of this up. First place that we always need to start is with the definition here. This is a video that I found online that has a 48-second clip of the definition. We're going to go ahead and let it play through most of it because the last little bit is gibberish.
A charter school is an independently run public school. The charter establishing each school is a contract between the school's operator and the government. This contract details the school's mission, program, and performance measures. These contracts ensure charter schools are held accountable for explicit goals, and they enable the government to provide the schools with freedom from any rules and regulations. If the charter school successfully meets its goals, the government can extend its contract.
Okay, so that's good enough. There's a little bit more to it. I'll have a link in the description below with all of this stuff. So if you too are tired of politicians and politics getting in the way of every single stupid thing out there, and you just want to know the truth so you know what to do, give my video a like, thumbs up. I've got Patreon and Subscribe It helps me out. You may not like Patreon, you may not like YouTube. That is wrong. That's what you need to do because it helps me. So we're going to go ahead and go over to Wikipedia. So I want to talk about Wikipedia for a moment. This is complete garbage and trash. This is something that happens all the time. They have a tiny fraction of information out there. I mean, it's stupid. It's not even a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. So if you come here and you look at this, charter schools, and we click on Australia, you're telling me that all the information with Australia and charter schools can be summed up into what? 3 sentences? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences. That's it? That this is going back, it says here, until the 1970s. You've summed up Australia's history with China schools in 1 sentence? Wrong. It's absolutely wrong. What it should be is that whenever you go on to charter schools, all it should be is something like this. And you should have to scroll down and scroll down and scroll down and scroll down, because how charter schools applies to what? To around the entire planet, with all of these countries, with all of their states and provinces, with all of their cities. Oh, what are you talking about? And it has a history. At least it says there back into the 1970s. And I'm sure it goes back further in other places. Somewhere it was saying 1917 in the Netherlands. So what are you talking about? This is grossly understating what charter schools is. And so you should be able to click on whatever it is that you're specifically wanting to know about. So the United States. Oh, the United States here, it has a few paragraphs. You're telling me that we can't even do paragraphs for these other countries? Get out of here. So it's ridiculous. And that's only one of many problems with Wikipedia. And it's why we're all so stupid whenever it comes to this stuff, because it's just scattered all over the place. So we're talking, yes, about two things: charter schools and voucher programs. So here they have it defined as: a charter school is a school that receives government funding but operates independently of the established state school system in which it is located. It is independent in the sense that it operates according to the basic principle of autonomy for accountability, that it is freed from the rules but accountable for results. It's like, oh, yeah, okay. We're going to get into it. We're going to explain all this stuff. Then we have school vouchers. A school voucher, and this is stupid right here, also called an educational voucher. It's like, no, it's not. It's either one or the other. It's just like with genders. How many genders are there now? It's in the hundreds as to how many genders there are. Well, why do we need that? We don't. It's all fake. It's all make-believe. So let's look up a voucher. Voucher synonyms. So synonyms for vouchers: coupons, tokens, tickets, documents, certificate, license, permit, carnet, I don't know what that is, pass, paper, card, form, deed, chip, slip. You can go on. So you could say, also called an educational, an education coupon, or an education document, or an education certificate, an education license, an education permit. No, it needs to be one. You could have a million different also calls. It's like, no, it needs to be one. Why? Because we want it to be as simple as possible. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than necessary. It needs to be as simple and effective and efficient as we can possibly make it. Because I do not care about other words to describe the same damn thing. It's stupid. It's one or the other. So another problem with Wikipedia, it's like, no. And they do this constantly. So, well, screw educational voucher. No, it's a school voucher. Any voucher system is a certificate of government funding, and you could do that with every single word here. Okay, instead of certificate, it was the same thing as before. You could also say sometimes called a coupon or a token or a ticket or a document or shut up. Is a certificate, and then the same thing with government, federal government, state government, local government. Shut up. Funding, sourcing, money. Anyways, is a certificate of government funding for students at schools chosen by themselves or their parents. I don't know why it would be by themselves, but I guess there's always those circumstances. Funding is usually for a particular year, term, or semester. In some countries, states, or local jurisdictions, the voucher can be used to cover or reimburse homeschooling expenses. In some countries, vouchers only exist for tuition at private schools. And then in a 2006 survey of members of the American Economic Association found that over 2/3 of economists support giving parents educational vouchers that can be used at government-operated and private schools, and that support is greater if the vouchers are to be used by parents with low incomes or children in poorly performing schools. So we have this here, the title, Charter Schools Voucher Programs, and then all of these, whenever I do this, it's an SOP, standard operating procedure. A lot of this is just copy and paste, but then I fill this stuff in. So all this at the very top from number 1 and above is just the same. And whenever I copy it, then I change out, it just says title right here, and then I just get rid of the word title and I put in what the actual title is for this one. In this case, it's charter schools and voucher programs. Then we have charter schools, and then the definition here. And this is that video that we just watched for a few seconds. And then a school voucher and its definition right here. And you can go on Wikipedia if you want to look up more information for yourself. Side A and B, all sides of the argument. Is there a point that ends the discussion? Because a lot of times there's something that you just can't get past, and it's like, well, the argument ends because you can't. It just kills it. It doesn't happen all the time, obviously, but it definitely happens. So side A for the argument, and the ones who are for it, they will say that it gives parents choice, and it's like, well, yeah, it's obvious because you have the choice between public school or charter school. And one of the ways that you can help deal with this, to deal with charter schools, is to give them a voucher. So they're kind of hand in hand with it. They are separate. But the focus really is for this a little bit more for charter schools in the voucher system. But I think they really kind of go hand in hand. Because how are you going to get away from the public school? Well, you need a voucher system. And the voucher system is, instead that every single school has to get a voucher in order to be funded. So that means, yes, public schools, in order for them to get funded, they need to have that voucher. Charter schools, if they want to get funded, need that voucher. Private schools, if they want to get funded, should get that voucher. It's ridiculous that only the rich can afford to go to private school. They are double paying, though, because they are paying their taxes to pay for the public schools, and then they have to pay a second time to send their kid to a private school. It's like, no, that's ridiculous. You know, what should happen instead is that if they have enough money to pay for public schools and for their private schools, it would be better to have that money divided out better. Where the voucher, where you got rid of that, and instead parents would pay more through taxes or something, but then also their voucher is worth more, so people are fighting more to kind of have these larger vouchers. I don't know, something along the ways, but they're double paying, and it's like it's getting spread out to schools that don't perform well, these public schools. Anyways, kind of getting off here. So yes, it gives parents choice. So then that way, if you are in a low income neighborhood, if you are of middle or lower class, you're not one of the wealthy elites, then this gives you an opportunity to get away from that trash school that you're in. My cousin was a principal for a long time, and here in Texas we don't have teachers unions, and he gave horror stories about where, yes, it could cost up to $100,000 to get rid of one bad teacher, and what they would just do is just throw the teacher off into another school system or another school, maybe in the same system, because they didn't have the funding to get rid of all of these teachers to pay that $100,000. And a lot of it is because of school or teacher unions having all these things. And it's like, no. The purpose of the school system is not to give jobs to people. It's not to provide teachers so that they can have a job. The purpose of the education system is to educate the students. And we're going to come across this. It's a straw man argument. So the first thing that you do have to do is recognize what it is that you want to talk about. Do you want to talk about the students? Do you want to talk about the teachers? Do you want to talk about the system? And there can be some overlap. So if you're talking about the system, you can say, well, in regards to how it's benefiting the teachers, or in regards to how it's benefiting the unions, or in regards to how it's benefiting the students or the parents. And I guess you can kind of throw them in, but whenever you really focus in, it kind of helps clear up what it is that's going on and what your goals are, what should be goals and what shouldn't be goals. Charter schools can provide the atmosphere of a private school, and it's because usually they have smaller class sizes because the charter schools themselves are usually smaller. There's more one-on-one learning. Okay, so one of the functions of charter schools is that it's supposed to divide students up based off of their capabilities. That you're going to go to this charter school because this is where you're going to excel at the most, and all the other students there are like you or like your child. And then that way at this school, everybody's going to be doing the same thing. So if your kid has dyslexia or ADHD, or if they're a honor roll student or whatever, then all these students here are going to be the same. It also means that if your child has problems, if your child is skipping school, getting involved with drugs or alcohol or whatever, okay, well, same thing with the rest of these students here. So now the entire school and staff, that they're all educated in dealing with this. And a lot of times it also means dealing with the parents. That it matters what the kids are doing whenever they go home. Are they going home after school? Are they doing their homework? Are they studying for tests? Are they involved in extracurricular activities? Or do they go home and just play video games, watch movies, read comic books, listen to music, and they're not doing anything that they're supposed to whenever they're at home? Or are they not studying for those big tests whenever they come up? Or are they not completing their homework? It's like, okay, so then these schools are some schools would be focused on not only problematic children, but also parents. Because I've said this before, just because somebody has a child does not automatically transform them into being some kind of saint. Everybody knows this. There are plenty abusive parents out there, and they're abusive in a whole bunch of ways. They encourage competition, and competition creates accountability. So in other words, if the charter school, if it's not performing and it's not doing what it's supposed to, then that's the way that it's accountable. Because if it's not, then they're going to go down in the toilet right there. Can be closed for underperformance. So kind of along the same lines of what just was talking about there. Side B, or the against side, charter schools only take the best students. Yes, I hear this all the time. And it's like, yes, obviously, because it separates kids by performance. So these charter schools that are just starting off, yes, of course they're going to pick the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit first. One of the problems is that it's hard to look at public schools and say, here are the good students, here are the bad students, here are the middle of the road students. They don't have that divided out very well. You know why? Because they're all just crammed into one school. Another thing that I see is corruption. I don't know how to break that up because this is such a vague word. It encompasses so much. One of these is tax breaks. Investors enjoy considerable tax advantages thanks to a tax credit established by President Clinton. Those funding charter schools benefit from a 39% credit on contributions over a 7-year period. They also have the ability to collect interest on the money they contribute. A fund could double its investment in 7 years, and the credit can be combined with other breaks without limit. It's like, is that corruption? Yes. Who knows about this stuff? Politicians, the wealthy elites. It's like, what are you talking about? Even if you know about it, if you're from middle class or lower class families, are you going to have the money to be able to do it in the first place? So is that corruption? Kind of depends on how you look at it. Because is it completely bad? Is it bad that they're getting funding? Is it bad that they're getting tax breaks? Because what is that? That's incentive for them to invest in the first place. That I don't know if it's any good or not, because if they're able to double their investment in 7 years, it's like, well, no, you've changed it. That doesn't sound. That sounds like money laundering, a money laundering scheme for politicians. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like that, oh, you know what? I funded President Clinton and I would like to get my money back. Oh, I can do this and I can double my money in 7 years? That's what it sounds like to me. And so, yeah, and there's plenty of instances whenever two things can be true at the same time. So, is this helping out the schools? Yes. Is it also some kind of corruption and money laundering with wealthy individuals and politicians? Yes. They make it difficult for public schools. Critics say charters still top students from public schools and actively keep problem students away. Yes, that is exactly what it's supposed to do. They're supposed to divide up the students based off of student performances. It's absolute trash that you have like all of these other students who are doing well, and then you have a handful of bad students who are performing like garbage, and now the teacher has to stop, take time to deal with them. Stop talking in class. Sit down. Having to deal with these class clowns. We're taking a test. Don't look off of the other students' papers. Stop cheating. Stop passing notes. It's like, no, they should be divided up, and the teachers should be, they're going to be better trained if charter schools ever get off the ground and all the schools become charter schools, then you're going to find that division. They make it difficult for public schools and actively keep problem students away. It's said that they do this via a difficult application process. Yes, it's, and I'll finish reading. And declining to participate in lower income friendly programs like school subsidized lunches, and because they still high achievers, district schools receive less money while still having to pay the same overhead costs as before. Okay, so I'm going to deal with this last one, I guess, first. They still high achievers, yes. District schools receive less money, yes, because now they have less students while still having to pay the same overhead costs as before. Yes, you have less students. So, you know what? If that means that you have to close down some of the classrooms or some of the buildings there, because like, at least with the high school that I went to, there were several buildings across the campus. And if you don't have as many students, then shut them down. Why should they be given money to have those extra buildings or extra rooms up and running and maintained? It's like they're not using it. That's ridiculous. So let's go back. Well, let me finish this up. A difficult application process. Yes, because if they're looking for high-performing students, then they should have an application process designed for that. Also, if they're looking for students who have some kind of mental block, if they're ADHD or dyslexia, then yes, that should be difficult for a normal student to get into that. Whatever criteria the school wants to, that means it's going to be difficult for others. They're not looking for every single student out there. They're looking for a specific group of students because that's what they're catering to. Well, that's ridiculous. All right, so what are we talking about? Are we talking about teachers? Are we talking about programs? Are we talking about unions? Are we talking about the students? Or are we talking about what I am talking about is I'm talking about students getting the best education that they can. So right here, these are from articles that I pulled up. Declining to participate in lower income friendly programs like school subsidized lunches. What does that have to do with the student's education? Are they getting a good education? Are we worried about the education or are we worried about feeding them? Those are two separate problems, and the two are not correlated with each other. That if there's no reason whatsoever that if the students are having problems getting fed, that we can have a separate program for low-income families so the students can get fed that has absolutely nothing to do with the school and the teachers and the education. They don't need to participate in it. That's not what they're there for. Because why stop with that? Because they decline to participate in lower income friendly programs like school subsidized lunches, like school subsidized computers, laptops that they can take to school, for school subsidized clothing, for school subsidized transportation to and from the school, for school subsidized whatever. Pick what are all the problems that come whenever you don't have a lot of money? Well, it's everything. It's not their job to do this stuff. This was on Wikipedia too. A 2006 survey of members of the American Economic Association found that over 2/3 of the economists support parents or giving parents educational vouchers. And then this is it right here. I took it from the bottom of Wikipedia there. So I some of the things to go over later. I can't do it all now. I'm trying to keep this under an hour. Other countries. A system of educational vouchers was introduced in the Netherlands in 1917. Today, more than 70% of its pupils attend privately run but publicly funded schools, mostly split along denominational lines. And then here's where you can find that information. And this was done in 1997. I don't know if anything's changed since 97 to now. It didn't say. The Netherlands has one of the top educational systems in the world. In Pearson's 2014 Global Report on Educations, the Netherlands ranked number 8. So here's some things that, if you care about this stuff, it's going to chap your hide. Here's where I took it from. The Borgen Project, I don't know if I said that right, .org. 5 reasons education in the Netherlands work well. And then this, I just copied and pasted that right here. The Netherlands has one of the top education programs in the world, 2014, blah, blah, blah. Schools in the Netherlands give homework sparingly. In the U.S., elementary students are given more than the recommended amount of homework, which is time-consuming. It's like, I don't care if it's time-consuming. Is it effective or not? Okay, so here we go. Research has shown that play and exercise are vital to children's growth and school performance. Dutch students under the age of 12 receive very little, if any, homework, which gives them time for daily exercise. Okay, well then, if this is what research has shown, why are we not doing it over here? Because of corruption. This nonsense over here that charter schools deal with corruption, it's like, yes. You know why? Because it's still linked to the government. You know, there's corruption in public schools. So I don't know what they're talking about. This is, they are comparing it to a fantasy utopia. Every system has corruption. I don't know what the hell it is that they're talking about. And that's a separate issue. I care. Well, are charter schools performing the same, worse, or better than public schools? Corruption is something else. We're talking about finances and what's going on, and if that needs to be cleaned up, then fine, so be it. But that's a completely different thing. You're talking about the spending of money. I'm talking about the education of the kids. Number 2, education in the Netherlands is fairly affordable. Oh man, this one. It is free for primary and secondary schools. Okay. Parents need to pay for annual tuition only after their child reaches 16 of age. Just so that we're aware, for those of you who may not know, their high school equivalent, they graduate at 16 instead of 18. So after 16, that's whenever they go on to college and university and all that. So just so that we're clear, it's not the same. And low-income families can apply for grants and loans. For university students, this one's going to piss so many people off. The average cost of tuition is about $2,000 per year. Per year. Not per semester, not per month, not per week, per year. Take a look at this trash. The average cost of tuition is about 2,000 per year. How did they word it? Let's make sure that we've got the wording. Ha! Tuition costs of colleges and universities. For the 2018-2019 academic year, annual current dollar prices for thousands, not over here, $2,000. Oh, and then the very next, I didn't have to do all that. In the U.S., it's close to 10,000. What the hell? I know why. It's because there's all this government subsidizing that's going on to all of these schools, to universities, colleges, high schools, all this. They just get funding. Just it's like Richie Rich must be part of the government, and he's just sitting on a toilet, just crapping out all this money all the time, and they just throw it over there to the schools. Oh man. There are different types of classes Dutch students can take for secondary school before college. Students can take senior general secondary education or pre-university education before they go into college. They can also take preparatory secondary vocational education if they do not want to attend college right away. The system allows students to work with a program that will accommodate their needs, so they have choice. Education in the Netherlands involves learning a second language. All Dutch students learn English. Okay, and what does that matter? Is there some kind of? It doesn't say anything about research helping with that in any way, so I don't know why that's one of them. So I mean, maybe there is, but it doesn't say it here. The Dutch school week is different from an American school week. A school day in primary school usually takes place from 8:30 a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. on weekdays, but students go home for lunch instead of eating at a school cafeteria. So, you know, if there's problems with these low-income school programs that we were just talking about, declining to participate in lower income family programs like school subsidized lunches. Okay, well then go home. Go home. They're doing it here. Why can't we do it? Well, what are they doing different? Instead of eating on Wednesdays, schools dismiss students around noon, and yet they perform better than we do. And it seems like it's so much more relaxed. On Wednesdays, they go to school until noon. They don't get homework, and they do more play, and they're outside running around more. And here they are. And you know what we do over here? We say, no, you have ADHD. Here's some Ritalin. Calm down. It's like, no, the answer should be these teachers need to innovate, and they need to take their damn students outside, let them run around, and waste all this damn energy that they have. It's like, I wish I had energy is wasted on kids. It's like, give me that energy. It's ridiculous. So now we're going to go here. Tom Sowell wrote, oh man, after he turned 90, the day after, he came out with this book. So it just happened recently on charter schools versus public schools. So we're going to listen to a little bit of this.
Again, notes on the passing scene. An article from the New York Times just a couple of days ago. Quote, now this is a longish quotation, but it's important to lay out the facts here. Over the last decade, the charter school movement gained significant foothold in New York. The movement hoped to set a national example. If charter schools could make it in a deep blue state like New York, they could make it anywhere. Over 100,000 students in the city's charter schools are doing well on state tests, and tens of thousands are on waiting lists. But the election of this November, suggested that the golden era of charter schools is over. The insurgent Democrats did well across New York, but especially in the state Senate, have repeatedly expressed hostility to the movement.
Oh, it's so ridiculous. It's like, well, okay, I have no problems with that. If you can explain why, and I mean actually explain why, instead of going completely off end. Before I forget, straw man responses. So a straw man response, stick to the topic. Are you talking about the students and their performance, or about the teachers, the unions, corruption, etc.? What are you specifically talking about? I am talking about one thing. My main focus is, what are the performance of the students? Are their performances going up? Going down? Staying the same? What's going on? What benefits that? I don't care about giving teachers jobs at all.
Closed quote. And Tom Sowell responds to that set of facts how?
Oh, that really is one of the moral outrages. That for many kids who come from a very poor background and whose parents may not have had much education, a decent education is the one thing they have to have a better life. And these schools have been absolutely spectacular.
The charter schools.
The charter schools. The successful ones. Now, there are a few that weren't. But
I know one of the things that needs to be asked right now. I don't care about the performance of the schools, but the students. Did the grades go up of the students that go to charter schools?
For example, a few years ago, on the statewide, New York statewide math tests, there was an elementary school, grade 4, I believe, in Harlem, whose students passed those tests at a higher rate than any fourth grade kids anywhere in the state of New York. I mean, we're talking.
Okay, now that doesn't matter. I'm going to have to throw a little slack here at Tom Sowell, because I don't care who you are. I want to know the truth. So if they are just going around, which I think no one really denies this, is that if they're taking the best students, then of course, aren't they going to perform extremely well? I don't care about that. I care about the students themselves. So were these students before, were their grades crap and now they're better? Or were they always good? And now that you've gotten rid of the rest, is that why it's performing so well? That's what I want to know.
In Scarsdale, Briarcliff, places like that.
I'm going to pause and fix this a little bit. No, I guess it's okay. I already did it.
The Success Academy schools as a whole.
So that's the name, Success Academy.
Their students pass both the math and the English statewide tests at a higher rate than any school district in the entire state of New York.
So regardless, that does sound extremely impressive. It's because these success academies that they are mainly in these middle to lower income neighborhoods like Harlem. And now they're performing better than all the others.
The vast majority of the kids in the Success Academy schools are either black or Hispanic. If you look at the five highest scoring school districts in the state in terms of the percentage of the students who pass the math or the English test, their average family income ranges from four times that of the kids in the Success Academy schools to more than 9 times the family income of the kids in the Success Academy schools. And yet, the mayor of New York is doing his darndest to put a stop to the expansion of schools in general, but his special ire is aimed at the Success Academy schools.
I want to change this. They encourage competition, they create accountability, and I want to add ability to the school, the students, the teachers, and the parents.
And this is happening all over the country.
Because they make the teachers' unions look bad that run the public schools. What's the political motivation? Why would Mayor de Blasio have an out for the charter schools, such as Success Academy?
Well, the teachers' union are the major reason. We're talking about the money they contribute, the number of votes they contribute.
So this is the exact same thing with steel workers. The steel workers unions gave all these votes to Biden, and then Biden turned around and stabbed them in the back. And they cut all their jobs and did all this horrible stuff. And it's because the unions didn't care. They got handbacks and all this kind of stuff. So where was that crap about corruption? Let me think about this a moment. So we're going to play corruption on the other side here because this isn't some kind of stupid utopia. And so if you're for charter schools, then this takes out corruptions from teachers' unions. Because they can hire teachers that are not in teachers' unions, and teachers' unions contribute large sums of money to politicians and votes. So don't give me this. This is ridiculous. It's like, where is that? Stick to the topic and utopias don't exist. Or we'll go with fake news. How about that? Because that's what it is. It's fake news. Shut the hell up. Trash, garbage. There's corruption. Yeah, every system has corruption to it. Congratulations, you're an idiot.
The schools, and what's happening, again, not just in New York, but in other parts of the country, including California, is that they have there's all kinds of chicanery to prevent the charter schools from expanding. That's why you have tens of thousands on the waiting list. It's not that the charter schools are not willing to expand, but every conceivable obstacle is put in their way. Because if you let that go at the natural pace, it would be very hard for the public schools to compete. And one of the things they're doing is imposing the same kinds of restrictions on the charter schools that made the public schools so bad. For example, restrictions on being able to get rid of kids who are running amok and ruining the education of everybody else. And the charter schools don't tolerate that. The things that are tolerated in public schools are unbelievable.
This is a great counter argument to all these idiots out there who say that they need to have equal outcome, that's their focus instead of equal opportunity. You can't guarantee equal outcome. You can throw all these students into charter schools where they're performing so well. And that doesn't mean that they're all going to come out the same. You know why? Because they're not. Again, kids with dyslexia and ADHD, they do not need to be in the same school as kids who perform normally or honor roll students. They don't need that. Honor roll students need to have an entire separate school and educational process than anyone else. Same thing with average school students. They need to have a completely unique experience where it's catered for them. Same thing for dyslexia and ADHD, or for these kids who are coming from bad families where they're suffering from some kind of abuse or neglect. You know, if they're just being neglected by their parents, where their parents are not making them go and do their homework and playing video games, that they just throw them down in front of the TV and using the TV and these games as babysitters instead of doing their job. Instead of saying, no, you will go over there, you will sit down at that kitchen table, and you will stay there until you have finished your homework.
So when I asked you a moment ago, how do we bring back the standards of the Harlem in which you grew up? The answer is that's a hard thing to do, but we do know how to do one thing. We do know how to establish schools where the kids in present-day Harlem have a shot.
Yeah.
So just so that we're clear, he grew up in Harlem, and he had a good education. And he talks about it constantly in a lot of his videos, especially whenever they start talking about his past, where he started there in Harlem, and he started off doing like FedEx deliveries or something like that with some kind of postal service. I don't know if it was FedEx or the post office. I don't remember. It's like, it's not... Education in low areas are 100% perfectly capable of happening. And we've gone away from it. Why? Because politicians do this stupid nonsense where they butt their nose into stuff that they don't know anything about. It's like, yes, if you have a student who is performing horribly, there are a lot of actions that need to be taken for that student. Now, the student still needs to have that opportunity to go to school, but just because you go in there and you throw them in a building that they've now crossed this magical line in the dirt, that now they're going to become great students. Oh, well, yeah, this student is going to an all-white and Asian school, and this student's now just going to have straight A's and just be... No! That's not the way that it works. It's a multiple faceted problem with all of these issues that have to be addressed. And one of the big ones that they found out, where I've seen plenty of this stuff, is that they find so often that the problem is not the student, but it's what the hell these stupid pieces of trash parents are doing at home. What they're not doing, what they're allowing their kids to do, the friends that they hang out with, all that stuff. It's like it all matters. You know what? If your child is hanging out with a bunch of hooligans that they aren't doing anything, guess what's going to happen to your kid? You need to tell your kid, no, it matters. You will stop hanging out with those, and I want you to hang out with these kids where they're doing their homework, where they understand the material, where they're getting good grades, where they're not skipping class, where they're not smoking and drinking. It's like you only have so much time. You have an hour or, say, 2 hours after school to do all this stuff. You can do one or you can do the other. So it matters.
With that.
Right.
And points of contention. The charter schools have the facts on their side. The other side has the rhetoric. And there are far more people who hear the rhetoric than there are who hear the fact, which is the reason for writing the book in the first place. The rhetoric says, look, when you put them all together nationwide, charter schools and traditional public schools, there's really not much difference. And in a sense, that's true, but it's like many things that are true and totally misleading.
So there are many things that are true, but also misleading. And I'm going to give another example of this after we finish listening to Tom Sowell.
The white students plus Asian students are a majority of the students in traditional public schools nationwide. Black students plus Hispanic students are a majority of the students in charter schools nationwide. Now, for years, generations, white students and Asian students have been scoring higher than black students and Hispanic students. Now, when the charter schools come along and close the gap, the people say, well, the charter schools know better than the others. If they know better than the others, how come the others had this huge gap for generations on end And now the charter schools are close the gap. My book, the data I collect, compares students who are comparable, that is, in more than 100 New York City schools, there are charter schools and traditional public schools holding classes in the same building. And in almost all the cases, in all the cases in my sample, blacks and Hispanic add up to a majority in both kinds of schools. And so we're now comparing comparable populations in comparable neighborhoods going in the same building.
So, in other words, what he's saying, he kind of took a long time. You need to remember he's in his 90s now. But what he's saying is that people who are fighting against this, they'll say, well, these charter schools are performing just like all the other schools on the national level. And you're comparing white and Asian schools to blacks and Hispanics. And he's like, no, take the white and the Asians out of the equation. Look at the black and Hispanic schools. Look at the schools that are in these lower poverty areas and compare them to the others. And you go from where they're performing down here, and then the charter schools are up here. Now, the critique on that is, well, yeah, because even in these low schools, they're just taking the best few, the 10 to 20 over here at this school. So in like New York, so they have a whole lot of schools because their population's in the millions, and so they're taking like the best out of all of them, and now they're performing up here. And that's good, because that is, if you're black or Hispanic and you've been told that, well, you can't ever do well, it's like, well, you can tell them to take that and go shove it. And this is why I'm saying, yes, you need to break the data down even further. And I want to know individually about the students. I want to know, well, okay, well, that's good. That's better. We got rid of them, but now let's look individually at the students. Because if the students in the public schools, if they were still doing A's and B's, and now they're in the charter schools, but now they're all the A and B students from all over, it's like, did they really do any better? It's like, I don't know. I don't think anybody's ever addressed that. So an example of this and something else is the wage gap between men and women, that women make like 77 cents to the dollar of every man. An example of this would be they'll go into like a city like New York or the state or whatever, and they'll say, we want to take a look at all the single men and women doctors to compare how much that they've made each year, and that will show that yes, there is actually 100% a wage gap. But what's wrong with what I said? All of it. Well, what do you mean by single? Because there's a difference between a man who's single in his 40s, who's never been married and doesn't have any children, versus a woman who was single but she got married, she raised kids, she was out of the workforce for 10 or 15 years, and now she's gone through a divorce or she's a widow or whatever. Now she's single. It's like they're not the same. Of course the guy's going to get paid more. He's been working for 10 or 15 years longer. Of course he's going to get paid more. Everybody's going to get paid more if that's the situation. What do you mean by doctors? Because there's a difference between pediatricians and brain surgeons. Women tend to be pediatricians. Men tend to be brain surgeons. Brain surgeons get paid more. But you know what's not going on? There are not police officers or law enforcement people who are saying, no, you're a woman, you cannot go to this university and learn how to be a brain surgeon. Or vice versa. That there are not cops at these colleges and universities telling men that you cannot take these classes to become a pediatrician. They're not at the hospitals or the clinics stopping them from applying for these jobs. That is not going on. They have the freedom to choose whatever it is that they want to do. And then what do you mean by how much money that they're making a year? Don't you mean, well, how many hours are they working? Because no matter what the job is, it doesn't matter if it's construction, if it's doctors, if it's lawyers, if it's whatever it is, men in every single job will work overtime, and women won't. That they will take time off to have more of a work-life balance, that they will take time off to take care of their kids or elderly parents, that they do that constantly. And again, in any field, the same thing with women. It doesn't matter if they're nurses, doctors, if they're doing construction too, whatever it is, women do that all the time. So yes, of course, if you're working less, you're going to get paid less. If you're working more, you're going to get paid more. So that's another situation where two things can be true at the same time. That's why you need to be able to break this data down. You need as much as you possibly can. You need to break it down. That's the problem with Wikipedia here. It's like, this isn't it. What are you talking about? This is trash right here. This should be insanely complicated with all this kind of stuff, and it needs to be divided up based upon of what the professionals are actually at. This crap of, well, 2/3 of economists are for, where is it? I don't know where it is here. A 2006 survey of members of the American Economic Association found that over 2/3 of economists support parents giving educational vouchers. Well, why is it not greater than that? Part of it is because, again, these economists, they're not well versed in it either. And what do you mean by economists? Because you're talking about the economy. It's like, no, I want to know about the economists who are specifically engaged within the educational system and what's going on with that. I don't need to know about the economists who are concerned about corporate jobs or banks or whatever. It's like, it's wrong. All right. I had a little bit more to go over, but we are at that hour mark right now, and so we're just going to have to save this for part 2 for later. So these are going to if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to make a playlist, so you can go back and you can look through all these at any time for whatever it is that you're wanting, because next time for part 2, I'll kind of briefly go over some of this, but then try to give a focus on new things to add to it. And just, yeah, that's going to be a big part of this channel from now on, because there's plenty of topics, there's plenty of stuff to break down and to get to the heart of the issue, because I do not care about politicians and their nonsense. I want to know what the truth is. And so if you do too, if you are tired of being lied to, you want to know what the truth is, you just want the real issue and you want it focused on, so you know what exactly is that's going on, then give this video a like, give it a thumbs up. I've got Patreon and Subscribe Star. That's what you do to help me. Yes, it might also help YouTube, but you know what? It's just like I was saying a moment ago. Two things can be true at the same time. Yes, that might help YouTube or Patreon. You might hate their guts, but this is the only thing that I have now. So that's the way that you help me. It's the only thing that I've got. So do it for me. And if so, then thank you. I appreciate it a lot. Hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll catch you again next time. Bye.